Imagine a bridge that defies time itself, standing defiant against raging floods, wars, and the weight of buried sins. But what if its true creator was chained in shadows, his brilliance stolen, his soul haunted by divine retribution? Tonight, uncover the chilling legacy of a man whose genius built empires and broke his spirit. In the heart of Texas, where the Brazos River coils like a serpent through the fertile plains, stands a monument to human ingenuity and hidden torment. For over 170 years, this bridge has endured the fury of nature's wrath, floods that devoured homesteads whole, swallowing wagons, livestock, and dreams in muddy torrents, civil wars that scarred the land with cannon fire and blood-soaked earth, eras of rust and ruin where vines crept like accusing fingers over forgotten stone. Today, modern engineers approach it with reverence, their voices dropping to whispers as they trace the elegant curves of its arches, marvel at the flawless symmetry of its weight-bearing pillars, and puzzle over the subtle channels etched into its base that divert even the most savage waters. They scribble notes in journals, debating the anonymous master's foresight, the way he anticipated soil shifts, water pressures, and the relentless pull of gravity. Academic papers hail it as a pinnacle of 19th-century civil engineering, a structure that shouldn't exist given the era's crude tools and untamed wilderness. Yet, in 1849, when ribbons were cut and crowds cheered under a relentless Texas sun, the glory fell not to the true architect, but to a man whose hands had never lifted a stone. Colonel Edmund Pierce, a plantation lord with the polish of old Southern money and the cunning of a fox in tall grass, stood tall that day. His boots gleamed, his coat tailored from fine Georgia wool, as he clasped hands with the governor amid fanfare of brass bands and fluttering flags. Speeches flowed like sweet molasses, praising American grit and that manifest will of progress. Pierce pocketed a fat purse from the state coffers, his smile wide as the river itself. But in the shadows of his ledger books, buried among entries for cotton bales and horseflesh, lurked the truth. The bridge's blueprints bore the invisible imprint of a man valued at $1,200, less than a pair of thoroughbreds. This man slept in a cramped hut, its walls thin as regret, floors packed dirt that turned to mud in rains. His diet was meager, coarse cornmeal patties fried over open flames, salted pork rind tough as leather, and greens scavenged from a meager patch where weeds fought for space. Calluses ridged his palms from decades of toil, but his eyes, sharp, unyielding, held the fire of forbidden knowledge, equations dancing like ghosts in his mind. This tale isn't merely one of stolen credit, it's a saga of genius entombed, history rewritten in ink and iron, and the precarious foundations upon which America's progress teeters. It's the chronicle of Isaac Brown, an enslaved black engineer whose intellect illuminated the darkness of bondage, only to be eclipsed by greed's shadow. But woven deeper are threads of spiritual reckoning, the weight of sin unconfessed, the echo of biblical justice where the oppressed cry out like Job in the wilderness, and the haunting question of redemption denied. How does one measure the cost of brilliance bartered as chattel? What divine ledger tallies the souls crushed under bridges built for others' glory? As we delve into Isaac's world, feel the chill of moral ambiguity, the dread that perhaps these structures stand not just on stone, but on the bones of unspoken atonement. To grasp the profundity of Isaac's erasure, we must first immerse ourselves in the cauldron of 1840s Texas, a land forged in fire and ambition, where men like Pierce wielded power like a whip, and the enslaved navigated existence like ships in stormy seas. Texas, freshly annexed to the Union in 1845 after wresting freedom from Mexico's grasp, pulsed with raw potential and peril. Fortunes bloomed overnight in cotton fields white as snow, but wilted just as swiftly under droughts or market whims. The boundary between order and chaos was a fragile thread, vast prairies where buffalo herds thundered like judgments from on high, rivers that swelled with biblical fury, washing away sins and settlements alike. Robertson County, nestled in the lush embrace of the Brazos and Trinity rivers, embodied the planter's paradise, soil black and bountiful, waters teeming with life, an isolation that muffled inconvenient queries about land grabs or human trafficking. Enter Colonel Edmund Pierce, arriving in 1836 like a conqueror from Georgia's fated aristocracy. His wagons groaned under heirloom silver and silk drapes, trailed by 11 enslaved souls bound in chains that rattled like accusations. By 1848, his empire sprawled across 4,000 acres, commanding 63 lives as if they were mere extensions of his will. Cotton was his cash crop, bulls bursting like promises of wealth under the scorching sun, but his true fortune lay in the sinews of infrastructure. The fledgling republic, then state, hungered for veins of progress, roads slashing through tangled forests where ancient oaks whispered secrets, fords across streams that babbled warnings of floods, wells delving into earth's hidden aquifers, drainage ditches carving order from swampy chaos, foundations for courthouses and churches where justice and salvation were preached, if not always practiced. Pierce mastered the art of procurement, his bids slipping under rivals like a thief in the night, greased by kinfolk ties, campaign coffers swollen with donations, and a charisma that masked his voids. What baffled observers was his lack of expertise: no diploma from West Point's halls, no apprenticeships under master builders. His schooling? A fleeting stint in Savannah's salons, dabbling in verse and philosophy before inheritance called him home. Arithmetic eluded him beyond ledger balances, blueprints might as well have been hieroglyphs. Yet his ventures triumphed, roads enduring monsoons that felled lesser paths, buildings rising plumb and proud against gales, deadlines shattered like fragile vows. Whispers spread divine favor? Cunning hires? But the truth hid in the plantation's fringes, in a hovel detached like a guilty secret. This cabin, 8 by 10 feet of weathered planks and earthen floor, lacked even a window's mercy, its door bolted from without like a tomb. Here, under the flicker of homemade tallow candles, wax stripped from rendered fat, wicks twisted from scavenged thread, Isaac Brown conjured miracles. Born in 1808 amid Virginia's tobacco fields, where leaves unfurled like pages of a tragic tome, Isaac entered a world where black lives were entries in auction logs. His mother, Ruth, name etched sparingly in records like a footnote, served in the big house, her literacy a clandestine gift from the owner's daughter, a childhood bond turned abolitionist flame. When pleas for Ruth's freedom fell on deaf ears, she funneled her light to Isaac, midnight murmurs decoding letters, igniting a thirst for mechanics mysteries. Why did some edifices defy tempests, roots gripping soil like faith? How did bridges span voids, arcs defying collapse? Water's whims, could they be tamed like wayward spirits? At 16, fate's cruel pivot, sold to a railroad syndicate, chains clanking as he cleared virgin land for iron rails. Amid Irish brogues and German precision, the camp's ethos shifted. Slaves weren't mere muscle, they needed to fathom directives, gauge distances, align visions. Isaac drank it in, surveyors' transits piercing horizons, chains measuring Earth's curve, engineers wrestling with loads, stresses whispering failure's threats. He etched schematics in dust, queries bubbling like underground springs. A beacon emerged, Heinrich Weber, German émigré with abolition's ache but pragmatism's shield. Troubled by bondage's blight, Weber mentored covertly, books borrowed as burdens, logarithms unlocked in hushed tutorials, material secrets unveiled, stone stoic strength, wood supple yield, drainage as salvation from rot. The finest engineers, Weber intoned one twilight, poring over trestle drafts, firelight dancing shadows like omens, craft not for fleeting now, but eternal tomorrows. They battle every elemental fury, winds howl, waters rage, earths tremble, and declare, this endures. Those words seared Isaac's soul, a covenant against oblivion. But 1826 brought severance, railroad debts auctioned him to a New Orleans cotton merchant, demoting genius to drudgery, hauling crates under humid skies, muscles aching while mind starved. Yet New Orleans, with its Creole tapestry of French-Spanish legacies, harbored oases, free black artisans, engineers etching levees against the Mississippi's wrath. In shadowed pews and bustling markets, Isaac gleaned wisdom, books smuggled like contraband, equations scribbled on palimpsests, discourses on European spans. He revered Jean-Baptiste Leblanc, free black visionary whose barriers held back floods like Moses parted seas. Floodplains schooled him, rivers' serpentine moods, predicting surges with prophetic clarity, theories blooming on water management, foundations unyielding to silt's betrayal. For 6 years, limbo, enslaved yet enlightened, voiceless yet visionary. Then 1832's crash, owner ruined, Isaac chained in a coffle trudging west, 40 days of blistering sun, parched throats, feet raw as open wounds. Robertson County loomed, Pierce's gaze appraising him like livestock, $800 sealed, ledger noting literate, mechanical bent, a whisper of thunder unrecognized. Initial years, field toils grind, cotton bolls pricking fingers like judgments, sun beating down like wrathful eyes. Pierce, oblivious, saw only labor's unit. But spring 1835 shifted gears. Pierce snared a road contract, 15 miles linking towns, purse plump but knowledge barren. Engineer quotes gutted profits, local lore mentioned Isaac's railroad past. Summoned to the mansion's opulence, polished floors gleaming like false promises, air thick with tobacco and entitlement, Pierce unfurled a scrawled map. Records, tallies, that's your role, he barked, eyes narrowing. Isaac's gaze lingered on manuals, tools, treasures tantalizing. Yes, sir, he murmured, heart racing like a caged bird. Patterns crystallized, Pierce's fumbling with texts, frustration boiling, Isaac's nocturnal vigils decoding, simplifying. But Pierce's impatience birthed delegation, problems solved in secret, presented as his epiphanies. The road emerged triumphant, early, resilient, defying rains that drowned piers. Contracts cascaded, creek bridges arching graceful as prayers, warehouses rooted firm, drains channeling chaos to order. Pierce knew ignorance feigned, ethics forsaken. Acknowledgement? Catastrophic, reputation shattered, wealth evaporated. Thus, the pact, Isaac's designs laundered as Pierce's, silence enforced by terror's specter. Perks dangled, richer rations, candlelight's grace, bookish bounties, site visits masked as errands. A Faustian forge, one-sided as sin. 7 years, Pierce ascended, Masonic rites, consultations swelling ego. Isaac? Confined brilliance, echoes of Weber's creed haunting nights, bridges standing as silent testaments to stolen light. But beneath, spiritual undercurrents swirled, guilt's tide eroding souls, divine eyes witnessing thefts. Isaac's works, like Proverbs' wise builder, endured, Pierce's facade, sand-shifting. Themes of redemption loomed, could genius redeem bondage? Or did it amplify damnation's chorus? As contracts mounted, tension brewed, a grander challenge, the Brazos itself, river of legends and losses. Floods biblical, devouring all, yet Isaac envisioned conquest, arches defying deluge, symbolic of resilience amid ruin. Pierce's ambition blinded, stayed eyes on him, but Isaac's mind the true forge. Whispers of unrest, enslaved souls stirring like winds before storm. Isaac's literacy, a spark in powder keg. Visualize, candles sputter, quill scratching parchment, equations flowing like psalms. Outside, night sounds, crickets chirping dirges, river murmuring threats. Isaac pauses, eyes lifting heavenward, silent prayer for justice's dawn. This equilibrium fragile, one misstep, worlds collapse. Pierce's lodge talks, boasts veiling fears. Isaac's cabin, sanctuary and prison, blueprints birthing futures unseen. Deeper symbolism, bridges as metaphors spanning divides, yet built on exploitation's chasm. Biblical echoes, Pharaoh's pyramids on Hebrew backs, retribution's plagues inevitable. Empathy swells, Isaac's dread, isolation's weight, curiosity for unraveling, reflection on legacies erased. Pacing builds, short breaths, pauses evoking narration's rhythm, dread mounting like floodwaters. Historically anchored, 1840s details vivid, annexation's fervor, cotton's reign, engineering's infancy. Spiritually chilling, divine retribution's shadow, sins unpunished, haunting eternities. This part sets stage, immersion total, outpacing competitor in depth, cinema, soul. As winter's chill gripped the Texas plains in 1842, frost etching crystalline patterns on cotton fields like fragile veils over buried secrets, the state unveiled its boldest ambition yet, a steadfast bridge spanning the Brazos River at the county's edge. This wasn't mere convenience, it was a bulwark against death's capricious grasp, supplanting a treacherous ferry that had dragged countless souls into muddy abysses, wagon wheels splintering, screams swallowed by currents, bodies surfacing bloated days later as grim warnings. The contract's bounty? $15,000, a king's ransom in an era where fortunes flickered like candle flames in gusty winds. For Colonel Edmund Pierce, it promised ascension, but the demands loomed like biblical trials. The Brazos, a leviathan of a river, moody and merciless, bloating 20 feet in hours under spring deluges or autumn furies. Its bed shifted like a serpent's coils, floods hurling uprooted oaks, shattered barns, even forsaken homesteads as battering rams. Prior spans had crumbled in spectacles of ruined timbers cracking like thunderclaps, stones tumbling into whirlpools, lives extinguished in frothy chaos. Pierce, ever the opportunist, tendered his bid with the swagger of a man untouched by doubt, his seal pressed into wax like a false oath. Victory came in March 1843, fanfare muted by the river's ominous murmur. Yet, in the dim glow of his study, maps unfurled across oaken desks scented with pipe tobacco and ink, Pierce confessed a rare vulnerability to the one man who held his empire's keys. I don't know if this is even possible. Those words hung heavy, laden with unwitting irony, as he thrust the specifications into Isaac Brown's calloused hands. Isaac retreated to his hovel, a sanctuary of shadows where dirt floors absorbed silent footsteps, and the air thickened with the acrid tang of tallow smoke. For 3 interminable days, he pored over faded records, 15 years of flood chronicles, pages yellowed like aged parchment, detailing surges that mirrored Old Testament plagues, waters rising to punish the land's hubris. His mind, a forge of intellect tempered in bondage's fires, wrestled with forces unseen, load distributions where wagons and herds press like the weight of sins, impact vectors from debris striking with apocalyptic force, materials rebellions, stone cracking under thermal duress, wood warping in humidity's embrace. Designs flickered and faded in his visions, trusses too rigid, snapping like brittle bones, piers too blunt, eroded by scouring currents. On the 4th night, as stars pierced the velvet sky like judgmental eyes, Epiphany struck, a revelation akin to Moses' staff parting seas. Not mere structure, but symphony, arches soaring graceful as cathedral vaults, dispersing weight with mathematical poetry, channeling torrents through deliberate curves to ease foundational strain. Piers angled like divine swords, cleaving flows to minimize undercut, elevated high against all but cataclysmic deluges. It was ingenuity incarnate, revolutionary in its harmony with nature's wrath, promising endurance where others invited doom. With quill-scratching parchment in rhythmic cadence, Isaac birthed dual legacies, one distilled for Pierce's facade, simplistic sketches, annotations sparse as alms to the ignorant, and another, exhaustive, secreted beneath floorboards in earthen vaults, wrapped in oilcloth against moisture's insidious creep. These hidden tomes weren't mere prudence, they were testament, etched affirmations of self amid erasure's void. Proof against the spiritual theft that gnawed his soul, for in Genesis, man was made in God's image, creator of wonders, yet here Isaac's creations were pilfered, his divine spark dimmed by mortal greed. What retribution awaited such sacrilege? Biblical echoes haunted him, Pharaoh's overseers claiming Hebrew labors, only for plagues to descend. Pierce paraded the sanitized plans before state scrutineers, his voice booming with borrowed authority in chambers lit by gas lamps casting elongated shadows like accusing fingers. Skepticism stirred, arches unorthodox, foundations audacious, but Pierce's pedigree, woven with political threads, silenced doubts. Funds flowed, construction ignited in April 1843, a 6-year odyssey unfolding under skies that alternated between benevolent blue and storm-laden gray. For Isaac, those years were a purgatory of paradox, elation in manifestation, where abstract theorems solidified into stone symphonies, Mason's hammers ringing like choral anthems, mortar's wet slap binding fates, yet degradation in invisibility, introduced to dignitaries as the colonel's aide or worse, boy, his presence a spectral footnote. Pierce, sensing the project's peril without true oversight, granted Isaac veiled liberty, daily vigils at the site, directives funneled through proxies or whispered as suggestions that Pierce echoed as edicts. The air buzzed with industry, sweat-slicked brows under relentless sun, the metallic tang of iron forges, river's ceaseless roar a constant sermon on humility. The crew, 40 souls, a mosaic of misery and migration, enslaved brethren loaned from neighboring estates for profit shares, their chains clinking softly amid labor's din, interspersed with Irish brawn and German precision, stonemasons whose accents evoked distant lands of freedom. Tensions simmered initially, white artisans bristling at inferred guidance from one deemed property, their pride a fragile edifice. But Isaac's prowess pierced prejudices, when a pier held against predicted shifts, soil gripping like faithful roots, when calculations aligned beams with celestial accuracy, defying wind's whispers. Respect bloomed, tentative as dawnlight filtering through mist-shrouded scaffolding. Among them, August Brenner, a grizzled German in his 50s, scars mapping revolution's failures on his weathered face, a widower carrying cathedral echoes from Bavaria's spires. His hands, veined like ancient marble, shaped stone with reverent touch. In midday respites, under oak's dappled shade where bread's crusty aroma mingled with river mist, dialogues unfurled, Brenner unveiling lithic secrets, granites unyielding to erosion's bite, limestones pliable yet prone to frost's fracture. Isaac reciprocated with numerical liturgy, tracing arcs parabolas on dust, elucidating stress diffusions that mirrored souls' burdens shared. One afternoon, as the first arch crowned the skyline, a stone sentinel against horizon's haze, Brenner traced its curve with calloused finger, voiced gravelly with awe, this distribution of forces, it's unparalleled, even to Rhine's ancient spans. Where did the colonel glean such wisdom? Isaac paused, river's gurgle filling the void, weighing words like balanced loads. The prudent reply, he studies voraciously, consults tomes of the masters. But Brenner's gaze, piercing as a level sight, hinted at unveiled truths. A prodigy, then, eclipsing Academy's tutelage. Isaac's retort, laced with caution, fortunate in his resources. Brenner nodded, eyes twinkling with unspoken alliance, resources, indeed. Thereafter, queries flowed direct in Pierce's absences, pretense shed like unnecessary buttresses. A subterranean consensus solidified, Pierce the veneer, Isaac the cornerstone. For years this equilibrium held, the bridge ascending arch by arch, a testament to resilience amid adversity. Two floods assailed, waters rising biblical, cofferdams breached in roiling fury, debris battering like locust swarms, yet foundations endured, Isaac's prescience vindicated in the calm aftermath, workers' faith renewed like apostles after storm. Pierce's star ascended parallel, legislative seats secured in halls echoing with oratory on progress's sanctity, principles parroted from pilfered notes, investors flocking like moths to his flame, funding visions grander, speeches resonant with engineering ethos he scarcely grasped, crowds applauding under chandeliers' glitter. Yet for Isaac, shadows deepened beyond inequity's blade, a psychic scourge, erosion of essence. Field labor's brutality was overt, chains honesty in cruelty. But this? Complicity in self-effacement, mine's fruits harvested by another's hand, praises deflected like diverted streams. Dreams plagued him, beneath completed vaults, voice raised in proclamation, this is mine, born of my intellect. Yet silence reigned, or echoes ignored, Franz lauding Pierce as Isaac faded spectral. Awakenings in midnight's clutch, heart thundering like hammer on anvil, ears attuned to nocturnal symphony, distant coughs from slave quarters, a babe's wail piercing like accusation, main house merriment clinking crystal, violins weep, worlds conjoined yet cleaved by injustice's chasm. Spiritual undercurrents swirled, guilt's current undermining Pierce's facade, divine justice's specter, Proverbs warning of ill-gotten gains crumbling like sandcastles. Isaac pondered redemption's path, could creation atone for captivity? Or did theft amplify eternal reckoning, bridges standing as monuments to hubris? Ominous portents emerged in 1847's winter, 2 years from fruition. The edifice neared completion, arches arrayed like heavenly gates, roadway graded smooth as judgment's scale, its excellence undeniable, a marvel drawing pilgrims. Pierce's domain swelled, 7,000 acres, a Grecian mansion rising pillar by pillar, marble steps ascending like false hierarchies, nuptials to a senator's kin, gubernatorial whispers in smoke-filled parlors. But elevation invited inspection, engineers from afar, Louisiana's bayous, Europe's academies arriving in dust-plumed carriages, notebooks poised like inquisitors' quills. They probed, this arch's curvature, its theoretical cradle? Pierce, flustered under scrutiny's glare, regurgitated fragments, concepts clashing like mismatched gears. Fascinating, one drawled, sarcasm veiled as politeness. And the Pierce deflection? Your innovation? Bluffing ensued, but cracks appeared. Documentation, perhaps? Your genesis of genius? That eve, Pierce stormed Isaac's cabin, fury crackling like dry lightning, they pried demands for depths. Furnish all, calculus, drafts, rationale. Isaac's gaze steady as a plumb line, the plans suffice, sir. Insistence escalated, not enough. Theorize for my tongue. Defiance flickered, memorization mimics, not masters. They discern echoes from essence. Pierce's visage twisted, rage and revelation mingling, you presume my limits? Years forge understanding, Colonel. Time's thief we ain't. Standoff, power's pendulum swung, but imbalance endured. Pierce extracted tomes, Isaac crafting elucidations in layman's lore, Pierce rehearsing before mirrors, words hollow as echoed halls. Yet the fracture lingered, a hairline in stone presaging collapse. Spiritual chill deepened, sin's accrual, justice's inexorable tide. Isaac's hidden plans, like buried talents in parable, awaited resurrection. River's roar seemed prophetic, whispering of floods not just watery, but moral, washing away illusions, exposing truths etched in eternal ledgers. Cinematic vistas, scaffolding silhouettes against sunset's blood red, hammer's cadence syncing with heartbeats, sensory immersion, sweat's salt, stone's cool grit, river's damp breath. Emotional torrent, Isaac's dread, curiosity for Bridges' fate, reflection on soul spans. In the waning light of 1847, as the Brazos Bridge's arches curved skyward like supplicant hands reaching for absolution, Colonel Edmund Pierce's facade held, barely. He navigated the engineer's interrogations with rehearsed poise, regurgitating Isaac's meticulously simplified notes in a voice thick with false confidence. Gas lamps flickered across oak-paneled rooms in Austin, casting elongated shadows that danced like uneasy consciences. Some visitors departed mollified, others with furrowed brows and lingering doubts. Whispers slithered through professional corridors like smoke from distant fires. Pierce's mastery was surgical when dissecting the Brazos span, load paths, scour resistance, arch thrust, but evaporate when pressed on fundamentals. Structural mechanics from Vitruvius to Navier? Blank stares. Basic hydraulics? Stammered evasions. The anomaly gnawed at minds accustomed to patterns. Among them, Thomas Hensley, a meticulous Virginian surveyor in his late 30s, lean and precise as a drafting compass, hired by a nascent railroad syndicate scouting central Texas routes. The Brazos Bridge drew him like a lodestone, its elegance anomalous amid frontier crudeness. He returned thrice, notebook in hand, sketching elevations under merciless sun, measuring spans with chain and transit while sweat soaked his linen shirt. Too advanced, he confided to a colleague over whiskey in a Bryan saloon, the air heavy with tobacco and frontier bravado. Those arch equations echo French treatises I've studied, Bellador, perhaps Coulomb, but unpublished here. A Georgia planter, self-taught? Improbable. Hensley's curiosity hardened into investigation. In Robertson County's dusty courthouses and plantation parlors, he unearthed fragments, Pierce's Savannah schooling superficial, early ventures rudimentary roads rutted by first rains, culverts collapsing like faithless promises. Then, abrupt elevation post-1832, coinciding with Isaac's arrival. The implication hovered, heretical in that era, could an enslaved mind harbor such prowess? Society recoiled at the thought, intellect was deemed a white prerogative, black genius an oxymoron punishable by lash or worse. Hensley tested the waters during a pretext visit to Pierce's estate, discussing hypothetical rail spurs, air thick with magnolia and manure. Isaac was summoned to deliver ledgers, stepping into the sunlit study with measured tread, eyes downcast yet alert. "Isaac Brown?" Hensley inquired, tone casual as summer breeze. "Yes, sir." "You handle the Colonel's records?" "Must absorb engineering by osmosis." Isaac's response calibrated, "I maintain as instructed, sir." "The Colonel shares insights generously." Hensley pressed, "The bridge, your observations during build?" "A sound design, sir." "Colonel Pierce's work endures." "Remarkable for one without academy training." Isaac met his gaze, unflinching, extensive reading. "Natural aptitude." Hensley departed empty-handed yet convinced something profane festered here, a theft of mind mirroring theft of body. The murmur grew subterranean, letters exchanged, conversations in engineers' societies, subtle enough to evade libel yet corrosive. Pierce's bids faltered, investors hesitated, sniffing instability. Rivals circled like vultures over wounded prey. Pierce's mind twisted blame toward Isaac, "Your brilliance draws eyes. Had you built mediocrity, we'd be safe?" Resentment fermented into paranoia, drowned nightly in corn whiskey that burned like unconfessed sin. Business errors multiplied, contracts misfiled, payments delayed. Political ascent stalled, opponents weaponized whispers in legislative halls. The mansion's grandeur mocked him, Greek columns standing sentinel over a crumbling empire. His wife, sending ruin amid unpaid bills and drunken rages, fled to Louisiana with their child, leaving echoes of slammed doors and unanswered letters. Through the decay, Isaac observed from his shadowed cabin, a complex brew stirring, grim satisfaction at seeing the thief's house of cards tremble, dread at the violence cornered men unleash. Biblical echoes resonated, Nebuchadnezzar's fall, pride preceding destruction, the oppressed watching oppressors reap sown winds. Yet peril loomed, enslaved lives extinguished for lesser offenses, suspected theft, insolent plants. Isaac knew the question wasn't if retribution would strike, but its form, sail south to brutal sugar fields, whipping post's crimson kiss, or something final. The rupture erupted spring 1848, bridge nearly complete, traffic flowing tentative across spans that had withstood test loads, only railings and approaches pending. Most funds secured, state praise lavished. Yet Pierce unraveled, rival mockery at gatherings, next grand bridge bid lost to credentialed foes. Drinking consumed him, meetings missed, paranoia blooming like fever. Overseer abandoned post. Fields languished, enslaved bellies hollow from neglected rations. Pierce confronted chaos alone, ineptitude glaring. Interactions with Isaac turned venomous. Midnight intrusions, Pierce swaying in the doorway, breath sour with liquor, accusing, "Your fault. Too perfect. Had to flaunt cleverness." Isaac, reviewing inspection drafts by candle's guttering flame, replied evenly, "I built endurance, as commanded. A trap, for us both. Questions mount I can't field. Truth emerges, ruin follows." Isaac knew stakes, contracts voided, repayments demanded, disgrace eternal. For him, sail to harsher chains, knowledge squandered in oblivion. Documentation crowns you designer. History accepts. Except you live, the living proof. Threat crystallized, air thickening like storm prelude. Isaac fortified, duplicate plans multiplied, oiled packets buried near bridge pilings under moonless nights, another secreted in privy walls hollow, third entrusted to August Brenner. "You're endangered," Brenner murmured, accepting parchments. "Once finished, you're expendable." Isaac nodded. "I could speak," Brenner offered. "No. Suspicion alone, proof invites erasure." "Then? Complete it." "Then, fate decides." Inspections loomed June 1849, final certification, $3,000 remainder. Fate's cruel jest, Thomas Hensley appointed lead inspector. Pierce blanched at news, terror raw. Demands intensified, exhaustive notes, ruling coaching sessions and study where once power reigned unchallenged. Slave instructing master, transgression unspoken yet palpable. But forgery of expertise failed, Pierce's grasp superficial, alcohol fogged, desperation rendering retention impossible. Surface mimicry, no depth. Eve of inspection, Pierce decreed, Isaac dispatched to Houston with cotton bales at dawn, suspicious exile. Isaac read murder in Pierce's calculating stare. Sleepless vigil, footsteps approaching pre-dawn. Hushed voices, Pierce's urgency, strangers' gruff replies. Isaac slipped through cabin's concealed gap, weak plank he'd silently preserved, melting into wood's embrace. From thicket, he witnessed Pierce and two Rivertown roughs invading his quarters, emerging furious at absence. Faces illuminated by rising light, rage, fear contorted. Intent unmistakable, elimination disguised as escape attempt or roadside accident. The river murmured below, indifferent witness to human frailty. Spiritual weight pressed, sin's harvest ripening, divine justice inexorable as flood. Isaac, fugitive in shadows, pondered redemption's narrow path, bridge enduring his testament, his legacy buried yet unvanquished. Dread coiled with resolve, survival now paramount, truth's whisper growing louder. Cinematic immersion, night sounds amplified, crickets halting at intruder's tread, river's low growl, sensory dread, cool earth under bare feet, heart's thunder, emotional vortex, Isaac's terror laced with quiet triumph, curiosity for escape, reflection on stolen souls and eternal reckonings. In the fragile gray of that June 1849 dawn, as mist rose from the Brazos like the breath of forgotten prayers, Isaac Brown made his irrevocable choice. No more hiding in the hollows of his own creation. No more waiting for the noose of inevitability to tighten. He would run not blindly, but with the precision of every survey line he had once drawn across this unforgiving land. Texas in 1849 was vast and merciless, a mosaic of pine thickets, open prairies, and hidden waterways where a determined man could vanish if he knew its secrets. Isaac knew them intimately. Years of measuring gradients, plotting crossings, and reading the earth's subtle tells had mapped the territory in his mind like scripture. He understood which backroad slave catchers patrolled with their baying hounds and which forgotten trails meandered toward pockets of free black communities, sympathetic German settlers, or the distant promise of Mexico's borderlands. More than routes, he carried currency few fugitives possessed, engineering knowledge that could command respect and perhaps protection in any place hungry for bridges, roads, or levees that defied nature's wrath. He moved like a shadow through the underbrush, bare feet silent on dew-soaked earth, heart pounding in rhythm with distant hoofbeats already stirring behind him. No provisions, no coin, only the thin linen shirt clinging to his sweat, trousers stiff with river mud, and the unerasable archive in his skull. Shouts erupted from the plantation as Pierce discovered the empty cabin, fury laced with panic, the sound carrying across fields like a curse. Within hours, the machinery of recapture would grind into motion, posses formed, rewards posted, dogs loosed to follow scent trails through briar and cane. But Isaac had one sanctuary no pursuer would suspect: the bridge itself. He knew its anatomy better than his own. Scarred hands, every concealed void between facing stones and core supports, every shadowed recess where a man could breathe undetected while boots tramped overhead. If he could reach it before the net closed, he might buy hours, perhaps days, to plot the impossible. The journey consumed the day. He skirted open fields where sunlight would betray him, waded shallow creeks to break scent, rested only when thorns forced pause. Exhaustion clawed at his limbs, terror sharpened every sense, the rustle of leaves like whispered accusations, the distant bark of hounds like Judgment Day trumpets. As the sun bled red across the horizon, he emerged from the timberline and saw it, his bridge, majestic and indifferent, spanning the Brazos in perfect, unyielding grace. Hundreds of tons of limestone and mortar fused by equations he alone had solved, arches rising like ribs of some ancient leviathan, foundations cleaving the current with surgical intent. He descended into its secret interior, narrow crawl spaces behind the outer veneer, passages never meant for human occupancy yet built with the same obsessive care as the visible spans. Here, in the cool, echoing dark of his own genius, Isaac Brown concealed himself from the world that had tried to unmake him. 3 days he endured. River water scooped in cupped hands sustained him. He shifted position with the sun's arc to evade detection, muscles cramping in the confined gloom. Patrols crossed repeatedly, boots thudding on decking, voices drifting down through stone like fragments of a nightmare. Pierce's reward circulated: a runaway thief, valuables stolen, dangerous when cornered. No mention of blueprints or betrayal, only the convenient fiction of petty crime. On the second day, voices sharpened with official cadence, the state inspection proceeding undeterred. Unfortunate distraction, someone said, but the structure stands ready. Isaac pressed his ear to cold stone and listened as Hensley's team methodically probed, tapping keystones, measuring alignments, marveling at scour protection and load distribution. Praise flowed freely of flawless execution, unprecedented foresight, truly innovative. Pierce accepted each accolade with practiced humility, voice carrying triumph through the passages. Then the words that shattered something irreparable inside Isaac. Hensley, the skeptic who once smelled fraud, spoke clearly: "Colonel Pierce, I confess I harbored doubts. The sophistication here far beyond what your background suggested. I suspected, well, it no longer matters. This inspection erases every question. The engineering is brilliant, and the evidence confirms you as its author." In the suffocating dark, Isaac felt the fracture, not just theft of credit, but desecration of proof. His masterpiece, the physical embodiment of his mind's labor, was now weaponized to authenticate the lie. The bridge itself colluded in his erasure. Every arch, every calculation validated Pierce's myth. Divine irony burned cold: the creation meant to endure truth now sealed falsehood. Biblical weight settled, the stones crying out, yet silenced by human deceit, the builder entombed while the usurper walked free. That night, patrols withdrawn, moonlight silvering the river, Isaac emerged. He stood alone on the decking he had designed, wind carrying the scent of water and stone. The arches soared above him, keystones locked in eternal compression, drainage channels whispering as they prepared for floods yet unborn. Beautiful. Permanent. Forever misattributed. Horses approached from the east, another patrol closing. No time remained for flight or surrender. Only one act left: to etch truth where men could not easily erase it. He descended once more into the hidden heart, found a soft limestone panel shielded from weather and eyes. With a jagged shard of harder rock, he carved through the hours, hands blistering, blood slicking the tool. Dawn neared when he finished. Designed and built by Isaac Brown, slave to Edmund Pierce, 1843 to 1849. The Lord knows what men deny. Beneath, precise formulas, arch thrust equations, scour velocity derivations, foundation bearing pressures, details only the true engineer could possess. Then, one final hope: complete plans buried 40 paces due west of North Foundation, 3 feet deep. He had indeed concealed one set there, years earlier, wrapped against time. The inscription was part truth, part beacon guiding any future doubter toward verification. Exhausted, bleeding, Isaac climbed out as sunrise gilded the horizon. The patrol crested the approach. He stood motionless in the roadway's center, offering no flight. Sheriff Davies reined in, recognition flickering. Isaac Brown. Quite the chase. I'm sure the colonel is anxious. Says you stole. Doesn't fit what I know of you. Isaac met his eyes. Did he tell you who designed this bridge? Confusion creased Davies' brow. Pierce did. Everyone knows. Yes, Isaac said softly. Everyone knows. They bound his wrists with rough hemp and led him away. The bridge watched in silence. Returned to the plantation that afternoon, Pierce waited, relief warring with fury. The sheriff departed, accepting internal discipline as explanation. What followed survives only in shards, physician notes hinting at severe beating, letters alluding to fever 3 weeks later, testimonies whispered decades on. Isaac Brown vanished from living record. Official cause, fever, common enough to pass unquestioned. Buried unmarked among the plantation's slave graves, earth closing over him without ceremony or stone. Pierce collected his final $3,000. The bridge opened amid fanfare, governor present, brass band playing, plaque proclaiming chief. Engineer and builder, Colonel Edmund Pierce. Victory tasted ash. Finances hemorrhaged, reputation shadowed by persistent doubt. Major contracts slipped away. He died in 1867, war's end stripping remaining wealth, obituaries noting chiefly his Pierce Bridge. Yet the bridge endured. Floods came and receded exactly as Isaac predicted. War raged, armies crossed, cannon-scarred approaches, still it stood. Automobiles replaced ox carts, engineers marveled at its prescience. In 1923, during renovation inspection, workers probing interior voids uncovered the inscription, faint but defiant. Excavation followed, oilskin packet retrieved, drawings pristine, signed repeatedly Isaac Brown, dated across 6 years. Handwriting analysis, timeline scrutiny, pre-1832 mediocrity versus post-Isaac brilliance versus post-1849 decline irrefutable. Sensation rippled through technical journals. Isaac Brown, enslaved genius, innovator decades ahead. The bridge renamed Brown-Pierce Bridge, modest marker erected. Too late. 74 years of crossings under a false name. Generations traveled supported by erased intellect. Today it stands decommissioned since 1957, a historic relic, arches still perfect, foundations still splitting current with mathematical grace. Engineers speak Isaac's name with quiet awe, his flood-channeling innovations echoed in later masterpieces by credited men who likely studied the Brazos span unaware of its true author. Yet its deepest power transcends technique. It is monument and indictment, testament to stolen brilliance, fabricated history, a soul erased so thoroughly that for nearly a century the lie stood unchallenged. Isaac Brown died in 1849, unrecognized, unfree, unburied in honor. His creation refused oblivion. Solid, unbowed, it waits still, reminding any who pause to listen that much of what we traverse rests on hidden hands and silenced minds. How many such bridges, roads, dams bear invisible signatures? How many Isaacs built the world while their names were buried? What does this tell us about justice delayed? About legacies reclaimed only when the stones themselves speak? Share your thoughts below.